I'm Ethan Parker, 33, from a small town in Ohio called Fairfield. I married Laura when we were both 25, and for years, I thought we were happy. We had two beautiful kids, Jack, 6, and Emma, 3. I worked as a project manager for a local construction company, and Laura stayed home, taking care of the house and the kids. Our life wasn't flashy, but it was good, or so I thought. About 6 months ago, Laura started acting distant. I chalked it up to stress from the kids, maybe cabin fever from being at home all day. I even suggested she take a break, spend more time with friends, or pick up a hobby. Little did I know, she was already spending her free time with someone else. One evening, Laura sat me down at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd spent countless nights laughing and planning our future. But this time, her face was different, cold, almost rehearsed. "I'm leaving you, Ethan," she said bluntly, not even flinching. "I've met someone else. I've been seeing him for the past year, and I'm in love with him." I felt like the world stopped spinning. My breath hitched, my heart hammered in my chest, and my mind raced to make sense of the words coming out of her mouth. But it wasn't over. And she added, "I'm taking the kids. We're moving in with him next week." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Laura was systematically tearing apart everything I had worked for: our marriage, our family, our home, all in one emotionless, matter-of-fact conversation. No tears, no guilt, just facts. It felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, and someone had just pushed me off. My voice barely came out as I asked, "Who is he?" She looked at me, not with shame, but almost smugly. "That doesn't matter. You should have seen this coming." I was stunned, but what followed cut even deeper. Laura had been telling everyone that I was the one who had cheated. She was painting a picture of me as the bad guy, the unfaithful husband who had driven her into the arms of another man. The worst part? People believed her. She had turned her family, my friends, even neighbors against me. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a complete annihilation of my character. I couldn't let her get away with this. I knew there had to be a way to prove her lies wrong. If she thought she could walk away from this unscathed, she was in for a rude awakening. After that night, I barely slept. My mind was racing with questions. How long had this been going on? Who was this other man? And how could Laura, the woman I loved, tear our lives apart like it meant nothing? The kids, Jack and Emma, what was going to happen to them? But as the days passed, I stopped asking why and started focusing on how. How could I fight back? How could I stop her from taking everything away? I realized I needed proof, something solid to show the court hell, to show everyone that she was lying through her teeth. I wasn't going to let her just walk away with my kids, my life, and my dignity without a fight. That's when I hired a private investigator. Laura had been too careful, erasing texts, hiding her tracks, but I knew people leave a trail, no matter how much they try to cover it up. It took 2 weeks, and I played it cool the whole time. I pretended to be cooperative, letting Laura think I was defeated, while I waited for the PI to get back to me. Then, one evening, I got a call. "We've got something," the PI said. "You're going to want to see this." Turns out, the guy she had been seeing was named Michael, 32, some local gym trainer. It all started to click. Laura had picked up a new fitness routine about a year ago, going to the gym several times a week. She said it helped her distress. Well, apparently it did, just not in the way I thought. Michael was exactly the kind of guy you'd imagine: chiseled, cocky, a guy who knew how to swoon women who wanted a taste of something new and exciting. But the PI didn't just give me a name. Oh no. He had phone records, texts, photos, and even receipts from the dates and hotel stays Laura had paid for with our joint account money. Dinners, gifts, weekend getaways, it was all laid out in black and white. My stomach churned as I realized she had been using our money to fund her affair. But that wasn't even the worst of it. Michael had a history. Turns out, he had a reputation around town for going after married women, the ones looking for an escape from their boring lives. He played the part of the charming savior, making them feel special only to toss them aside once he got what he wanted. Laura had fallen right into his trap, and now she was ready to blow up our entire life to be with this guy. I could feel the anger boiling inside me, but I wasn't just going to blow up. I was going to be smart about this. I needed to play my cards right. I had the evidence now, the truth. I wasn't going to confront her just yet. No, I was going to wait for the perfect moment. Because when this all came crashing down, I wanted to be the one holding the match. With all the evidence in hand, I knew it was time to act. But this wasn't going to be some messy confrontation. I wanted Laura to feel the full weight of her actions, and I wanted everyone who had been fooled by her lies to see the truth, plain as day. This wasn't just about protecting myself, it was about exposing her for who she really was. I met with my lawyer the next morning. We went over the evidence, the photos, texts, the financial records. My lawyer's eyes widened as he flipped through the stack of proof. "This is solid," he said. "She's not going to have a leg to stand on in court." "I want full custody of the kids," I said, my voice steady. "And I want to make sure she pays for dragging my name through the mud." My lawyer nodded. "With this, you've got a strong case. We'll hit her with everything at once: her infidelity, misuse of joint funds, and we'll clear up any rumors about you being the one who cheated." "I'll make sure of that." I walked out of that office feeling lighter, but I wasn't done yet. The legal part was important, but I wanted more. I wanted Laura to experience the consequences in real time, in front of the people she had turned against me. First, I started with her parents. They had always been close to us, and they had no idea what their daughter had been up to. Laura had fed them the same lies she told everyone else: that I had been unfaithful, that she had no choice but to leave me. So, I set up a meeting with them under the pretense of wanting to talk about the divorce. We sat down in their living room, the same place where we used to have family dinners. They looked at me like they didn't know who I was anymore. The tension in the room was thick. Laura had done her damage. "I know Laura has told you things about me," I started, keeping my tone calm. "But before you believe everything she says, I think you need to see the truth." I pulled out the file of evidence and handed it to them, one photo, one text at a time. I watched as their faces went from confused to horrified to downright angry. Her father's hands trembled as he flipped through the pages. How long?" her mother asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Over a year," I said, trying to keep the bitterness out of my voice. "And she used our money to pay for it, all the while telling everyone that I was the one who cheated." Her father slammed the folder shut, shaking his head in disbelief. "I don't believe this. She lied to us." I nodded. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but I couldn't let you go on thinking I was the villain here." Her mother looked up at me, tears in her eyes. "Thank you for telling us, Ethan. We had no idea." I left their house knowing I had just taken the first piece of Laura's support away. And there was more to come. But the best part? That was still waiting for her. Laura's parents were only the first step. Next, I needed to make sure that our mutual friends, the ones who had turned their backs on me based on her lies, knew the truth. So, I invited a small group of our closest friends over for a sit-down. They were hesitant at first, no doubt thinking I was going to deny everything Laura had said about me. They probably expected some kind of desperate plea for sympathy, but they had no idea what was coming. We gathered at a local bar, a spot where we'd all hung out countless times over the years. The mood was cold, distant. Our friends barely looked me in the eye, convinced I was the villain in Laura's twisted story. I could feel the weight of their judgment before I even spoke. I took a deep breath, then pulled out my phone. "I know you've all heard Laura's side of things. She's told you I cheated, that I drove her away. But before you write me off, I need you to see something." I placed my phone on the table and played a video one of the PI's goldmine finds. Laura and Michael, hand in hand, strolling into a hotel. The timestamp was just from a few weeks ago. I watched their faces shift as the truth finally clicked. Some gasped, others just stared in silence, completely stunned. But I wasn't finished. "This isn't a one-time thing. She's been seeing him for over a year, all while telling you I was the one breaking up our family," I said, my voice steady but fueled by the fire burning inside me. "And guess what? She's been using our money to fund this whole affair. All those trips, the gym memberships, the gifts. It wasn't just from her. It was from us, the money I worked for to support our family." Silence fell over the table as I handed them more photos, more proof. Their shock turned to disbelief, and then to anger, not at me, but at Laura. "How could she?" one of our friends, Greg, muttered. I'm sorry, Ethan." I believed her. The tide was turning, and I could feel the momentum shifting back in my favor. One by one, they apologized for turning their backs on me, for believing her lies so easily. But I didn't care about the apologies. I just wanted them to see her for who she really was. I left that meeting knowing I had done what I needed to do. Laura's safety net, the friends she had used to isolate me, was gone. She couldn't hide behind her lies anymore. But the final act? That was still to come. It was time to confront Michael. With Laura's lies exposed to her family and our friends, there was just one more person left to face Michael. The man who had helped tear my family apart. I wasn't looking for a fight, but I knew I couldn't let him get away without feeling the consequences. I waited for the perfect moment. The PI had given me Michael's work schedule, and every day, like clockwork, he was at the gym from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m., running personal training sessions. I decided to confront him when he least expected it, right in the middle of his day, in front of everyone. When I walked into the gym, I spotted him almost immediately. He was training a client, smiling and laughing like he didn't have a care in the world, like he hadn't just helped blow up my life. The sight of him made my blood boil, but I kept my cool. I wasn't going to lose control. I was going to hit him where it hurt. I approached him calmly, holding a manila envelope in my hand, the same envelope filled with the evidence that would ruin him. He glanced up as I stopped in front of him, a hint of confusion crossing his face. "Michael, we need to talk," I said, my voice low and controlled. He blinked, clearly not recognizing me at first. Then, it clicked. His eyes widened just slightly, but he tried to play it off like nothing was wrong. "Hey man, I'm in the middle of a session here," he said, waving me off like I was just another random guy at the gym. But I wasn't backing down. "Oh, don't worry," I said, keeping my tone calm. "This won't take long." I handed him the envelope. He stared at it for a moment, then hesitantly opened it. The color drained from his face as he flipped through the contents, photos of him and Laura together, hotel receipts, messages. It was all there, laid out in front of him like a nightmare coming to life. "What the hell is this?" he stammered, his voice shaking slightly. "This is your ticket out of town," I said, stepping closer so only he could hear me. "I've already sent copies to your gym's owner, your clients, and your fiancée." "Oh, you didn't think I knew about her, did you? That poor woman." I made sure she got the full story. His eyes widened in panic as he realized the depth of what I had done. He had built his reputation on being the charming, perfect trainer, the guy everyone trusted. And now, in an instant, I had taken that from him. "You've been messing with the wrong family, Michael," I said coldly. "You think you can just blow up people's lives and walk away? Not this time." He stood there, speechless, his tough guy demeanor crumbling right in front of me. I leaned in one last time. "Consider your career over. And if you even think about contacting Laura or my kids, I'll make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of man you are." With that, I turned and walked out of the gym, leaving Michael standing there, clutching the envelope like it was a grenade ready to explode. He was finished. But for me, this wasn't just about taking down Michael. This was about reclaiming my life, and I was almost there. After confronting Michael, I knew the last domino was about to fall. It was only a matter of time before everything caught up with Laura. She had been so confident, so sure that she could walk away unscathed, taking the kids, the house, and my reputation. But now, the walls were closing in. It didn't take long for word to spread. The friends who once believed her lies? They were talking. The gym? Michael had been fired within days. His reputation, like hers, was in shambles. And as for Laura, she had no idea what was coming. The final blow came when we met in court. Laura walked in with that same cold confidence, like she had everything under control. She had her lawyer, probably thinking she'd walk out with full custody of Jack and Emma, our house, and more alimony than she deserved. But what she didn't know was that I had come prepared with every piece of evidence meticulously laid out, ready to shatter her facade. When the proceedings began, her lawyer started with the usual arguments. That Laura was the more suitable parent, that she deserved custody of the kids, and that I, supposedly the unfaithful husband, was to blame for the breakdown of the marriage. That's when my lawyer calmly stood up and handed the judge the stack of evidence. Photos, texts, financial records, every dirty little detail about her affair with Michael. The judge's face hardened as he flipped through the papers. Laura's smug expression slowly started to fade, and for the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. Her lawyer fumbled, clearly caught off guard by the overwhelming evidence. "Your Honor, I wasn't aware of this," he stammered. The judge wasn't having it. He turned to Laura, his voice cold. "Mrs. Parker, is there anything you'd like to say about this?" Laura opened her mouth, but no words came out. She looked at me, as if hoping for some kind of mercy, but I just stared back. There was no mercy left for her. The judge's ruling was swift. Laura was found guilty of infidelity and misuse of joint funds. The evidence was irrefutable. Not only was she denied full custody, but the court awarded me primary custody of Jack and Emma. She would get visitation, but she had lost any hope of taking them away from me. On top of that, the judge ruled that Laura would not be receiving the generous alimony she had expected. Instead, she was ordered to pay back the funds she had used during her affair, every last cent. When the final gavel hit, it was over. Laura sat there in stunned silence, her world crashing down around her. She had lost everything: the kids, the house, her reputation, and Michael? He was long gone. The fantasy life she had imagined had crumbled in front of her. As we walked out of the courtroom, Laura tried to speak to me, but I didn't stop. She called after me, her voice shaking with desperation. "Ethan, please. I didn't mean for it to get this far." I turned, looking at her one last time. "You made your choices, Laura. Now you get to live with them." And with that, I walked away, leaving her to face the consequences of her betrayal. After the courtroom showdown, my life began to slowly rebuild itself. Laura's downfall wasn't the end of the story, but it was the turning point. I had my kids, I had my dignity, and I had my future back. But the damage she'd caused didn't just vanish overnight. There was a long road ahead for Jack, Emma, and me, but for the first time in months, I felt hope. The first step was moving forward with the kids. Jack was old enough to understand that something was wrong between his mom and me, but Emma was still too young to grasp the situation. I made it my mission to shield them from the worst of it, focusing on keeping their lives as stable as possible. Every day after school, I took them to the park or for ice cream. We started a new tradition of movie nights on Fridays, where we'd cuddle up on the couch, popcorn in hand, and laugh until they fell asleep. But even in the comfort of these new routines, there were difficult moments. Jack would sometimes ask why Mommy wasn't around as much, and I'd have to give him the gentlest answer I could. "Mommy and I don't live together anymore, buddy. But you'll always have both of us, no matter what." I wasn't lying. Laura had visitation rights, and for the sake of the kids, I never spoke poorly of her in front of them. I wanted them to love their mother, even if I didn't. But in the quiet moments when they weren't around, I found myself grappling with anger, sadness, and a deep sense of betrayal. Therapy helped. I started going once a week, talking through everything I had buried: my pain, my guilt, even my anger at myself for not seeing the signs earlier. Through it all, I began to heal. The town eventually forgot the scandal, gossip faded, and people stopped looking at me with pity or suspicion. In fact, after seeing the truth, some of the old friends who had distanced themselves began reaching out. But I didn't rush back into those relationships. I had learned to be careful with who I trusted. Then there was the house. The place that had once felt like a warm home now carried too many memories. I decided it was time for a fresh start, so I sold the house and found a smaller one in a nearby town. It was cozy, with a big backyard for the kids to play in, and it was ours, just the three of us. As for Laura, she stayed in town, but she was a shadow of her former self. The shiny illusion of her new life with Michael had evaporated. He had left her, of course, once the scandal ruined his career. From what I heard through mutual contacts, she struggled to find work, and the social circles she once thrived in had all but closed their doors. She had created her own isolation, and now she had to live with it. But even after everything, I wasn't out for revenge anymore. Laura had already paid the price for her betrayal. I was focused on something much more important: my kids, my future, and finding peace for myself. One night, after tucking Jack and Emma into bed, I sat outside on the porch, the cool Ohio air brushing against my skin. For the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to just breathe. I had been through hell and back, but I had survived. Not only that, I had come out stronger. The storm had passed, and while the scars remained, they didn't define me. My life was no longer about revenge or bitterness. It was about growth, rebuilding, and moving forward with the people who mattered most. And for the first time in a long while, I felt something I hadn't in months. I felt free. Discover more stories. Subscribe today.